Saturday, a cross-section of Nigerians commended President Bola Tinubu's administration after NNPCL and Aliko Dangote cast doubts on the viability of Nigeria's refineries. Dangote said the Port Harcourt, Warri and Kaduna plants may never work again, despite $18 billion spent on the repairs. NNPCL's Group CEO Bayo Ojulari confirmed a strategic review is underway and revealed that selling the refineries is a possibility. The opposition accused the government of deception and demanded a full investigation into the failed rehabilitation efforts, describing the situation as a costly failure that highlights deep-rooted mismanagement and potential corruption within the sector. We have, Bayo Ojulari, GCEO NNPC, at the OPEC Summit seminar last week, giving a statement on the state of the refineries and plans for the state-owned refineries.
Our refineries, we made quite a lot of investment over the last several years and brought in a lot of technologies. We've been challenged. Some of those technologies have not worked as we expected so far. But also, as you know, when you're refining a very old refinery that has been abandoned for some time, what we're finding is that becoming a little bit more complicated. So we're reviewing all our refinery strategies now. We hope before the end of the year, we'll be able to conclude that review. That review may need to lead to us doing things slightly differently.
Yeah. Could it lead to the sale of some of these refineries? Might you look to sell some of them?
I can't say that now, but what we're saying is that sale is not out of the question. Well, all the options are on the table, to be frank, but that decision will be based on the outcome of the reviews.
All right, GCEO NNPCL Bayo Ojulari at the OPEC seminar last week. We have joining us now Senior MD, I beg your pardon, Managing Director, Argentil Capital, Femi Oladehin, joining us now for the conversation. It's great to have you in.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure on your shows.
Yes, a delight to have you. Now, the state-owned refineries, late 2000s, it was up for sale for 700 million. Since then, 18 billion plus, right, in investment in the refineries. Now we have Dangote saying it's going to sell for less than 200 million as scrap. What are your thoughts on this?
So look, honestly, in any other country in the world, right, we will have, the National Assembly and civil society literally screaming blue murder. And we would have an open and transparent investigation into what went down with the refineries. And the truth is that we knew from the beginning that given the lack of investments by the NNPC into those refineries, the state of those refineries had degenerated significantly. And that if you were going to restart those refineries, you needed significant investments over a period of time for them to be able to reach some level of efficiency. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. And the level of transparency that we had under the previous NNPC leadership was such that even when in the private sector, we knew that those refineries were not necessarily beyond repairs, but that the solutions that the NNPC was pursuing was not likely to deliver the results that we were expecting. They went ahead and incurred significant amounts of money on fixing those refineries. I don't think the $18 billion number is correct in terms of the amount that has been spent on the 3 refineries. But the reality still remains that significant amounts of cash have been allocated to the repairing of those refineries. Now, if you were to use the more conventional metrics to measure the level of loss that we've experienced with those refineries, then you'll be looking at the fact that 5,000 plus people have been working in refineries that haven't produced any element of petrol, probably in a decade. Kaduna refinery hasn't worked for quite some time, especially the cracking unit that can deliver petrol or PMS. It's more or less just been delivering very heavy fuels for the past 10, 15 years. It's a disaster, obviously, that we allowed this happen. And you would obviously trace this back to President Yar'Adua, cancelling the sale of the Port Harcourt and Warri refineries as the catalyst towards getting to where we are today.
Indeed, but we're here now. And we had the Bayo Ojulari at OPEC seminar mentioning that a sale is back on the table. They're reviewing, and it's possible they're not ruling any options out. What are your thoughts on, first of all, this administration's, handling of these refineries? It's over 2 years in now. Would you say the Tinubu administration is being transparent with Nigerians about, the refinery, its rehabilitation, where we are at now? And what's your assessment of how they're handling this situation?
I wish I could come here and have some very hard negative words to say about the current government, but it's true that we've seen a significant improvement in the levels of transparency. One of the things that Bayo promised when he became MD and GCEO of the NNPC was improved transparency. And in all honesty, we've seen increased transparency. Under the previous NNPC leadership, they would have come with some lies to tell us that, yes, the refinery was producing. You remember the last time that they were selling products that were already in tank and reporting it as, the refinery is in production. I think that we're seeing significant improvements in transparency. Obviously, we then need to start asking questions as to all of the cash that went into the repair of the refineries. Were those properly accounted for? And did we get the level of investment that was required? Now, what were the technical studies that were done post completion of the turnaround maintenance to give us the confidence that these refineries were going to work in a sustainable way? I was saying this to your colleagues last week that we have a clip of us discussing these refineries about 2 years ago. And I said to them that if those refineries worked, I was going to eat my shirt on national TV. And I'm still repeating it. Those refineries, as long as they are being operated by the NNPC, are beyond repairs. You need pragmatic private sector intervention in this sort of rehabilitation that are able to ensure that there is accountability, independent monitoring, and independent technical support. Also ensuring that commercially, all of the elements that are required for a proper project finance are in place before you kickstart that process. So I think that Mr. Ojulari is saying that the sale of the refineries wasn't off the table is positive. I think that there is a world in which we actually should encourage them to get rid of those refineries, fire everyone who is sitting in there now drawing a salary for 10, 20 years without producing anything. And let's reduce the level of waste that these refineries have cost us.
I mean, you mentioned 5,000 plus members of staff collecting salaries from those refineries. And basically, from what I'm hearing, you're recommending an outright sale, scrapping of these refineries. But how might this proposed sale of Nigeria's refineries, how do you see that affecting public trust, especially in the light of post-privatization failures, such as in the electricity sector?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, a refinery is a simple, process. And what you will find, as you have seen with the Dangote refinery, is that a well-run refinery can continue to produce for a very long time. Refineries in Europe are 50 plus years old, and they're still operating at almost maximum capacity. So the refineries are not the problem. What has been the problem with our refineries is incompetence and lack of diligence of the management teams that have been running them. And that's what a solution that we can find should focus on. The private sector, as you know, in as much as we have some failures when it comes to privatization, there are significant wins that we can point to. The banking sector is one of those wins. Element Petrochemical is there, continuing to grow into $1 billion company since its privatization. So it's not like privatization is this poison pill that we have to avoid at all means. What we need to be doing as a people is that increase due diligence during the pre-privatization process to ensure that the persons who were selling these companies to have the competence and the financial capacity to run them efficiently and unlock value for the country. I still say that the NNPC's refineries in the hands of the private sector will be obviously more efficient than they've been in the last 20 years. So what a situation whereby the private sector takes over those refineries relative to where we are today, is always going to be positive. There's no negative that I can see here. And that's why we must insist now as a people that they need to sell off those refineries.
Indeed, a sale of the refinery. And you believe that Dangote's model now, would you say, provides some sort of model for whoever's going to take over if that is the outcome, right? Would you say the Dangote model is appropriate for them? Does he provide a template for such refineries?
That'll be the outcome. You know, they've done this a million times and they've not been able to solve the problem. And again, I'm going to commend Mr. Ojulari for at least accepting that it's an option for them to exit that refinery business. Second thing is that the Dangote refinery is a new refinery. Until it goes through its first turnaround maintenance, you really wouldn't know, you know, if they're able to run it. But if Dangote's pedigree is anything to go about, you know, he's run the largest cement factories in the world. He's run some of the largest, you know, businesses and factories, manufacturing processes in the world. So that means that there is significant competence within his team to be able to turn around such opportunities. One other thing to mention when it comes to Dangote is also that he doesn't use quota system when it comes to hiring the team or the competence of the team that manages his refinery or his businesses. He finds the most competent people in the world and he hires them. Now, imagine if we brought that to play in a refinery that is owned by the private sector. He's given us a template that works. Not only has he even given us a template that works, he's dominating the market and he has become the king of the downstream play. You know, right now, dictating price, dictating volumes and deciding where the direction of the market should go. Now, imagine if we had other refineries at the same level of capacity that are able to continue to deliver value. Nigeria's economy would immediately just shoot through the roof because we're talking about a significant export market around the African continent that we should have been servicing in addition to our own local supplies. So I would say again that, look, it is not rocket science that our refineries have not worked properly. Dangote has built a world-class refinery that gives us an indication of what it means to run a refinery properly. It's become the template for this market. And anyone who is taking over the Port Harcourt refinery, in fact, why shouldn't we be selling it to Dangote? You know, but anyone who is taking over the refinery has his, you know, his template as a benchmark against which they can benchmark their own operations.
Right. I mean, are you proposing that Dangote be on the list of those to buy the refineries?
The only reason why I wouldn't put Dangote on that list is we know Dangote is going to he has become a monopoly already. So we don't want a monopoly. So, I mean, of course, we'll be encouraging other persons to become part of the process.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, obviously, in light of the passing of former President Muhammadu Buhari, just in a minute or two, highlight his impact in the oil and gas sector, his legacy as well within that sector.
So look, President Buhari is a basket case of good and the bad. For the oil and gas industry, he was phenomenal in the sense that he eventually made sure we passed the PIA that had been in limbo for almost 20 years. On that ground alone, I think he earns himself the accolades of the oil and gas industry. Now, if we take it out of that space and say, look, what did he do when it came to subsidies and those, I mean, other elements of the industry that were quite important for us? We would say like maybe he could have done better, you know, but the truth is that by passing the PIA, he gets a pass on my own books, you know, because he's given us a framework or a platform upon which we can build our businesses, upon which we can make long-term investment plans. That has to be positive. You know, look, in Africa, we say we don't speak ill of the dead, but at least we're allowed to speak honestly about how they've performed. And I think that that's a positive for him. But on other elements like the refineries, on other elements like, you know, ensuring that we became more dependent on gas and we're able to expand our gas investments, I feel that there were opportunities that were missed in that space and we could have done better.
Indeed. Thank you very much for your perspective there. Managing Director, Argentil Capital Partners Limited, Femi Oladehin.